Between the last decade of the 18th century and the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861, cotton came to dominate the United States economy. The key event that began this domination was the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney, who was known more in his day as a gun maker than as the inventor of the cotton gin. Uh, in 1793, this was a simple device. The one that you see pictured here is simply cranked by hand, but it did something very, very important. It separated the cotton from the seeds. This is the raw cotton being put into the cotton gin. And then when this crank was turned, the cotton would be pulled through a series of teeth which would separate the seeds from the cotton. The waste was down here at the bottom, and this was the processed cotton, free of seeds. That dramatically increased the productivity of slaves. It allowed one person to process far, far more cotton in a day than he or she otherwise could. Now, you might think because it was so efficient, it would reduce the demand for slaves, but quite the contrary. It greatly increased that demand. Um, and slavery, as a result, spread westward to Alabama, to Mississippi, to Louisiana, and later, after it became a state, to Texas. Um, the amount of cotton grown is the reason why slavery increased so dramatically. This made cotton efficient enough that it could be exported for low prices, especially to Britain, and it fueled the English Industrial Revolution. A good deal of it was also sent to the north, where it fueled the textile mills, especially of New England. Now, to give you an idea of how dramatic the effect of the cotton gin was, we can look at cotton exports. In 1792, the last full year before the cotton gin, the U.S. exported 138,000 pounds of cotton, which is not very much at all. In the first full year after the invention of the cotton gin, that would be 1794, the number had gone up to 1.6 million pounds. That's an 11-fold increase in 1 year. By 1801, 48 million, and by the eve of the Civil War in 1860, 1.65 billion pounds of cotton. This is an increase of over 1,000 times between 1790 and 1860. And by 1860, cotton made up 2/3 of the value of all U.S. exports. The South had a saying, King Cotton, because this really was, in many ways, the driver of the U.S. economy. Large planters took those profits and invested them into more and more land and more slaves. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the U.S. economy and the British Industrial Revolution were built on the backs of African American slaves. Now, if you look at cotton production, each dot represents 2,000 bales of cotton, and you can see here that in the area of Mississippi, near the Mississippi River, cotton production is so intense that the dots all merge together. Notice the pattern here. There's this pattern like this is known as the Cotton Belt. Now, you'll see that almost no cotton is grown in Virginia, but they had an enormous quantity of slaves, and a lot of those slaves were exported to the lower South to be used in the production of cotton. Now, if we look at a map of slave density, the pattern is very similar. You see the same sort of telltale shape. The areas where there were the most slaves were the areas that grew the most cotton. There are a couple of exceptions to that. One is the coast of South Carolina, where rice is the dominant crop, and the other is in Virginia, where tobacco is an important crop, although not as important as it was during the 18th century in the colonial period. Now, if we look at these two maps side by side, you'll see the similarity pretty dramatically. This pattern here is very similar to this pattern here. Now, the growth of slavery was as dramatic as the increase in cotton production. Between 1780 and 1860, the number of slaves went up eightfold. And when you consider that they were far more efficient because of the cotton gin, this gives you some idea of the size of the increase. We had a little glitch here. I don't know what happened, but we'll just continue. Um, we could ask why the natural increase in the slave population. This was a result more of natural increase than of the importation of slaves, because if you'll remember in the Constitution, Congress was granted the power to stop the importation of slaves 20 years after the ratification of the Constitution, which would have been 1808, and they did that with the encouragement of Virginia, who wanted to keep the value of slaves high since they had a surplus of them and they could sell them to other southern states. Now, why such a natural increase? Well, the nutrition on the North American mainland was better than in the Caribbean. It was a healthier environment. There was more land available for food production. The end of the slave trade meant that planters had a self-interest in keeping slaves alive. They didn't treat them well, but they realized that they were an investment that had to be protected because they could not bring more slaves in. Finally, American nursing practices were quite different from those in Africa. It's a biological fact that when a woman nurses or breastfeeds her babies, she is less likely to become pregnant again during that period of nursing. And in the United States, the period of nursing a baby was much shorter than it was in Africa, and therefore women had children at closer intervals. They were they were closer together, and therefore, they would have more children over their period of childbearing years. Slave owners were very aware of this fact.